Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 67. Revire Point of View. The last thing Revire expected was to be invited to go cave exploring with the Empress, but here she was, following the shepherd as he led the way to the Spitter Wolf Den. During the walk, her curiosity got the better of her as she spoke up. "Shepherd, what exactly are we going to be doing here?" Zassida glanced back and flashed a fang smile. "But Maury asked for any questions to be reserved until the end of the tour." At that, Historietta snickered softly with amusement, and while Revire did get the joke thanks to having an understanding of Earth humor, she was vaguely annoyed at being kept in the dark. Before long, they reached the den, the mouth of the cave being defended by two healthy-looking spitter wolves, the wolves standing as Zassida approached before sitting down and relaxing, seemingly allowing them to pass. "It is such a shame that most wildlife around here is so aggressive in nature. I would love to have a spitter wolf to raise and care for. They're such beautiful beasts that are the best of both worlds," Historietta said with mildly exaggerated disappointment. Revire looked at the Empress curiously as they walked, passing through the first room and making their way deeper into the den. "What do you mean by the best of both worlds? Do you have something similar back in your world?" "I wish," Historietta mused with a smile as she looked over to Revire. "I mean, that spitter wolves are the best combination of good fluffy boys and cool skatey boys," she gushed. "I would love to see a puppy of them, but that might be asking for too much." Revire considered this, and had to admit that she could understand the appeal. "Well, they certainly are cute when they are young," she mentioned, flashing a bemused expression over to the Empress. Historietta gasped before flashing an excited grin as she stepped closer. "So you do get it. I knew that we could be friends," she teased before chuckling softly, though she got quiet as she watched the massive spitter wolves come to meet the group. "Oh, it's Lugosi. Hello," she said as she gave an excited wave to the spitter wolf. Lugosi was confident in his approach, though his ears did pull back for a moment at the excited woman, remembering how aggressively forward she was the other day. However, he collected himself as he looked at Zassida and offered a wolfish smile. "Welcome, Shepherd. What is going on?" he asked simply as he sat back and looked between the trio, his tail slowly wagging as he waited. Zassida smiled as he gestured to the two women. "But Maury asked me to bring them downstairs, and he feels they might know more about the situation than he does." Lugosi bobbed his head in understanding. Okay, so you're here going to go to the room where I found a cool stick, my cool sword," he stated, before correcting himself as he glanced happily at the sword strapped to his side. "I'll come with," he said simply, as he just invited himself before looking at a certain she-wolf, the she-wolf bobbing her head as Lugosi looked back at Zassida. "Let's go," he called to the trio as he stood and led the way, scampering off deeper into the den before leading them down a hallway, which led to a set of stairs. "Whoa," Historietta said softly as she looked down the staircase before following along with the others. "This place feels old. Like, really old." She then flashed a bit of a smile. "I almost feel like Indy exploring some lost ruins," she mainly mused to herself as they passed by traps that had already been triggered and cleared. Revire had to think about that for a moment before speaking up. "Are you perhaps referring to Indiana Jones, an academic adventurer who explores ancient ruins while often fighting with evil humans?" Miss Historietta looked pleasantly surprised by Revire getting her reference and flashed a smile as she glanced back at the elf. "Do you know about Indiana Jones?" she asked with a healthy mix of delight and curiosity. Revire tilted her head side to side before offering a bit of a smile. "I know of him, at least, but Maury read several books detailing his adventures." Historietta smiled some more as they turned ahead, eventually coming down to a chamber with a clear spring. Looking around at the old architecture, she looked curiously at a few things before coming across the spring. "Whoa, that's a whole lot of ooze." Revire looked over curiously, vaguely intrigued as she looked between the Empress and the spring. How can you tell? It looks nearly indistinguishable from water. Historietta scratched her cheek as she averted her gaze. I just have an eye for these things, she mentioned before offering a sheepish smile. Rayvire felt she was hiding something, but it wasn't her place to question, as it looked to see Zassiter waiting patiently for them on the other end of the room. Sorry, Shepherd, we are coming, she said, as she made her way over. Historietta followed close behind as they crossed the threshold into the next room. Is this? Historietta was speechless as she glanced between Zassiter and Rayvire. Before anyone could respond, Lugosi called out from atop the massive cracked dungeon core. This is where I found my stick. But Mori called out from within them soon after. This is the core of the person before me, and she was from another world, like Historietta and myself. Rayvire and Historietta share a glance, though Rayvire steps forward as she begins to look around. So, this is the Lichtron's chamber. This must also be where the final battle took place, she exclaimed excitedly, having heard the stories of what might have happened, though she stopped in her tracks as she stroked her chin thoughtfully. Wait, was she an otherworlder? How do you know this? She asked as she looked around the room, not entirely sure where to face to address Mori, who was now obviously in the room with them. After a few moments, a dim ball of green light appeared in the room and floated around before coming down in front of Historietta and Rayvire. Because she was still around until a few days ago, damaged and unable to repair her core. I also found her room, not to mention that she's sitting right there, he explained, the ball of light coasting across the room before hovering above the strangely serene-looking skeleton sitting on the throne. Oh my! I can't even imagine being trapped and alone for over 600 years, Rayvire said sadly, still not entirely sure what to make of everything here, as she began looking over the room. Historietta breaking off to do her own examination. At the same time, Zassiter settled down on some rubble. How do you know that it's been 600 years? Mori asked, his curiosity evident to Rayvire as she glanced over to the ball of light. Well, that's because it was around when my grandmother was alive. She knew of Lichtron and the plan to destroy it. I mean, her. She corrected herself as she looked at the skeleton that was on the throne before stepping away. She only heard about it indirectly, though. A majority of the elven tribes were isolated and kept themselves separated from the matters of the short-lived. She paused as she comes across the woman with a circlet melted into her skull, and her eyes widen, and she continues to speak. That didn't stop the humans from convincing a tribe of elves and dwarves to procure a hero from their people and outfit them for battle. This, right here, was the elven hero. I don't remember all the details, but this equipment reminds me of what I read about the Archon Igus, a specifically woven armor designed to resist all forms of intangible magic. Though, she obviously didn't wear it right, or she might have made it out alive. She explained derisively as she shook her head at the ancient elf corpse before stepping away. Historietta spoke up from the other end of the room. I found the dwarven hero. Poor bastard got crushed but didn't have the good fortune to die right away, she said as she tapped the armored corpse with her foot. So where is the human hero? Revire pondered aloud as she looked around. He's probably this black bone spot on the ceiling, Mori chimed in, the ball of light rising up to the ceiling to illuminate a shadowy outline of a humanoid shape. A fiery red spear embedded center mass to the skin. Ah, yes. That's probably it, Revire said simply, looking more impressed at what happened than anything else. Historietta looked around quietly, looking from where the stain on the ceiling was before glancing back down at the cracked core and then back up to Lugosi, who was sitting atop the core. She offered the Spitter Wolf a smile and waved at him. Oh, Lugosi, come down here for a moment. Can you show me your sword, please? She cooed to the wolf. Lugosi's tail began to wag curiously, before excitedly making its way down. Sure, you also want to see how cool it is? He asked excitedly, reaching around with his teeth as he grabbed the handle, drawing the blade as it hummed with life as he swished it around before slowing to a stop so that she could look at it. Historietta flashed a smile, though she slowly reached out and gently patted the top of Lugosi's head's fur, taking a moment to relish how fluffy it was. Lugosi appeared anxious for a brief moment, but at the petting, he closed his eyes and slowly leaned into it. When she pulled away, he opened his eyes and watched her curiously as she examined his sword. This is a vorpal sword, an enchanted mithril blade of human design. It makes it easy for the wielder to cut through most materials, and the singing the blade does when it is swung causes the blade itself to vibrate intensely and make wounds very hard to heal, she explained methodically, almost as if she was reading something. Lugosi's ears drooped again as he listened to Historietta speak. Does that mean that I can't keep my sword? Does it mean it belongs to someone else? He asked, a hint of a whimper in his throat as he watched her. Historietta smiled kindly as she affectionately ruffled the top of Lugosi's head. No, the sword is yours. The owners of this blade are long dead, so nobody can take it from you, she explained, reassuringly as Lugosi's tail began to wag excitedly as he hopped around cheerfully, the sword humming and whirring with each sway. Revias flashed a small smile at Lugosi before looking at Vidmori's ball of light. So you said that you found the Lictrin's room, and that is the skeleton used to be the Lictrin herself. Does this mean that she could make herself a body? Like an avatar of some kind, Historietta chimed in. Vidmori doesn't answer as the ball of light flits out the room and returns the way they came. Zassida stands and follows as everyone else makes their way out. The ball of light went across the string of ooze and parted the wall to reveal what looked to be a bedroom inside. The others don't really make a move, unsure of how to make it over to the room, until the stone bridge starts to form before them. Sorry, I almost forgot that you all need to walk to make your way across. Revia smiled with relief as she crossed the stone bridge. Thank you, Vidmori, she enthused before looking around the room with surprise at how, typical it seems. She spotted a small drawing that wasn't really drawing and looked it over. This, was Lictrin, but, she looks like a normal person. How could this be the dread dungeon of undead and monstrosities that threatened to bring ruin to the land? Revia pondered aloud, looking the picture over thoughtfully. She was a German too, Historietta mentioned casually as she picked up some drawings for a wooden person of some kind. Oh, so you know German? Vidmori asked, the anticipation nearly palpable in his thoughts. Well, no, not exactly, Historietta said, sheepishly scratching the back of her head. It's thanks to one of my skills. I learned multiple languages back on Earth for various reasons, so that allowed me to be granted the linguist skill when I got granted the system. I'm technically still developing it, but for now I can at least read any language. Eventually, I should be able to understand and speak any language, but that's not my immediate future. So you're saying that if I bothered to learn more languages, then I might not have even had this issue? Vidmori sounded noticeably annoyed, but more tired than anything as the ball of light swirled around over Historietta's head. Hey, you don't have any right to complain, she mused with a smirk on her face as she glanced up at the ball of light. You've got 4 times as many titles as I do. It's not my fault you maxed out your combat and utility skills. I'm just lucky to have a strong enough build to make my way through a political drama rather than your city builder survival sim. She chuckled to herself as she looked over the papers some more. Anyways, based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like these were instructions to build a wooden soldier. The crystal in the chest would be filled with the instructions, and then it would be given autonomy. Revia barely understood any of that, still contemplating the history that she knew. But she made her way to Historietta and peeked over her shoulder and hummed thoughtfully. Now, I'm no artificer, but I did spend a couple of decades studying magic tool creation and runic etchings on a whim, so I should be able to put something like this together. Historietta looked over at Revia, appearing somewhat confused by the words that just came out of her mouth just now. 2 decades? On a whim? She echoed with uncertainty. Revia shrugged a bit. I did other things, of course. Well, if that's the case, there's a couple more rooms I want you all to check out. But Maury started as the ball of light heads out the room, leading everyone back up before stopping in an empty chamber they passed through earlier. Only this time, another wall opened up, revealing an intricate workshop filled with all sorts of stations and unusual machines.
Holy crap, what's a place like this doing in some cave? What the hell?
She said excitedly as she moved from one station to another, recognizing various things but not touching them. Rayvire looked over things more slowly, recognizing a few things here and there from Vitmori's memories, while other things didn't look too out of place in her own world. However, she stopped as she came across a station with a wooden soldier laid out across it, a blank command crystal just lying beside it, ready to be filled with instructions. Before she could do anything, she was interrupted by Vitmori's thoughts. I can tell what you want to do, and while I do appreciate it, there are more important things to do right now. She sighed internally and nodded as she relented for the moment. All right, one more stop. This one I do need help with, he mentioned as the orb of light made its way out of the room, leading everyone back up to the Splitter Wolf Den. Zassida decided to excuse himself since he felt his role here was done, and Lugosi went off since his curiosity was satisfied. When the orb of light led them to another wall, it began to open like the others before, slowly.
Whoa! Look at this! Now that's high fantasy! A magic map table!
Historietta exclaimed excitedly as she walked over, quickly examining it before approaching the console and looking things over.
I see. So this is the thing that can show the current state of things, but also record and display previous events.
She then noticed the slot for the crystals, her finger trailing the edge of the slot as she looked around.
Hey, Vitmori, do you know where I can find one of these things?
Yeah, there are a couple of chests that are full of them over there, he mentioned as the ball of light led her to another part of the room. Meanwhile, Rayvire's attention was drawn to the maps on the wall as well as the globe, having never seen the world like this before. Her interest grew as she recognized old nations and borders from her history studies that no longer existed. As she paged through the maps and various documents written in a language she did not recognize, she found a crystal that was marked with a date just over 600 years ago. She plucked it up and looked it over curiously, nearly about to say something when Historietta called out,
Hey Rayvire, come look at this!
Historietta beckoned her over as she fiddled with the console after sliding a crystal into the slot. Rayvire walked over, approaching the table as the sand fell flat before rippling in waves and rising up once more. Before their eyes was a bustling little city encompassing the mountain, hundreds of buildings littering the place, great farms with many fields that showed signs of crop rotation, and wild fields allowed to revitalize naturally, all accompanied by an impressive fortress wall surrounding the entirety of the city, with towers and gates set up equidistant along the perimeter to allow lots of traffic for people coming in and out.
This was Slytherin's folly. It's amazing. It's almost as big as the imperial capital city.
She then looked at the crystal in her hand and held it out to Historietta.
Here, try this one next.
Historietta, for her part, was using the console to scroll around the map, zooming in on buildings and other city sections, before noticing Rayvire holding another crystal.
Oh, sure,
she says as she offers a pleasant smile, disconnecting the currently loaded crystal before comparing the two dates.
These are 2 months apart,
she commented before loading the crystal up as she tapped away at her console. The sand fell flat before rippling as the display rose again.
Why is everything on fire?
End of chapter. There is a new legend on the horizon. Blueberry Cat has taken the T6 Patreon spot. Thank you very much, and I am sure that I speak for everyone when I say that. I would just like to thank our T5 members, Lord Azrekahl, AmbroseKTal, Quantem Wensday, Dragzoon W.R.E, Blueberry Cat, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, and Leslie 517. Thank you very much.